scars remind me to appreciate the days I don't have to.
What's that in the background that's playing?
I'm closing my window. Is it gone now?
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Kind of back at the beginning of our time together. It's actually kind of a crazy Hispanic woman next door to me who's rambling a bit. And you remember that woman who lived in the apartment on Orange Drive?
Yes, I do.
Do those, what are they, Santeria chants at night?
She would get possessed like once a month and just like go
yeah.
absolutely out of her mind. This is where Jim and I first met and lived together in this apartment building that was right behind Grauman's Chinese Theater. Is the same situation going on there, Jim?
Well, she's can be emotionally disturbed. I don't know how exactly to.
Yeah. Be careful these days, man. You don't want to
silly stuff. Yeah, you know.
You want to call her crazy.
I can't diagnose her. I know that she is diagnosed and she should be taking her meds.
Hey,
and,
she's
prone to doing silly stuff. But
we were talking about Michael Bay last time that we talked, and something came up, and maybe you can find it, Kaylin. There's something that my son has been talking about for about 2 years. And he doesn't really talk about it that much anymore now. He's 10, but when he was 8, he was all into something called Skibidi toilet or Skibidi toilets, something like that. It was something toilet, Skibidi toilet, something like that. And some guy just started doing a half hour, 10 minutes or whatever, 2 years ago, and he called this thing Skibidi toilet. And, it blew up. I guess all the 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds are all over it. And, it got, I guess, better and better and better. And I just noticed Michael Bay's making the movie now.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I think so.
That must have been
Come on.
No.
No?
Michael Bay AI is saying, oh, is this on Variety? Wait, hold on.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me because it's like what every 9-year-old kid was talking about.
There's a Variety article I just popped up saying Skibidi toilet film and TV franchise in the work from Michael Bay, Adam Goodman.
Well, okay. Well,
that was from May 24th?
I thought, okay, something popped up.
Yeah.
July 24th, yeah.
All right.
Wait, no, that was from last year. I got to look into this a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Something came on my phone. It said Skibidi toilet. It said Michael Bay, and I thought, yeah, okay, that's. He's going to make another $1 billion on Skibidi toilet. My son has tried to get me to watch it a few times, and it's. I have a lot.
Apparently, it's extremely popular.
Okay, yeah. This Forbes article says it's official. This is from May 21st. It's official. Michael Bay will direct Skibidi toilet movie. God.
So I don't know if it's going to be as good as The Rock, So we'll have to wait and see if The Rock is still like the best movie.
All the audience agreed with you. They said, "Yep, that is definitely the best Michael Bay movie." And I looked back on it, I was like, "Yeah, that is the best Michael Bay movie."
That's too much. I thought I would. Jim, I thought I would talk, but just before, we get into the whole movie thing and everything, I just wanted to mention to you, man, isn't it fucking kind of crazy what Ukraine's doing now that the United States has kind of gotten out of the way?
Well, I saw a map. They hit a place in Siberia.
I know. I've worked in that fucking god-awful country in Siberia.
You really?
Yes. I hate Russia. It's a horrible place. And at some point, if you dig deep down enough, you'll find a film that I was accused of being drunk and therefore they couldn't make the movie and they sued me and I can just tell you that didn't turn out quite the way that they wanted it to. Just to give you an example, after they got done suing me, they sued the casting director, and then after I had to go for depositions and all this shit, they were all fucking hammered. It was 20 degrees below zero.
Russia, for God's
20, it was Siberia.
Everybody runs on vodka.
Exactly. Everybody was, you know, and they're all dead now from alcoholism and the director and all, you know, the producer. But anyway, when they got done suing me, and they didn't get what they wanted, I guess, they sued their lawyers. They sued me. So they were all about the whole suing thing. But I just thought of Ukraine, and I just thought like them like bombing the bridge, but like the whole thing of them being able to like take a bunch of trucks and send them out in different directions, and you know head 1,000 miles this way and 1,000 miles that way, and just blow up all
referred to as like a fleet of wooden
iron
horses, wooden horses,
right,
you know,
yeah,
Trojan horses,
horses, yeah,
you know, and which is a pretty apt analogy. It sounds like, but holy crap, did they do some hurt on those planes? They knocked out a third of their fleet.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
I guess Trump had a hour-long conversation with Vladimir today. And
Vladimir said he was going to have to do something about it.
We're going to have to do something about that. We just can't
we're not real happy with the fact that he knocked out a third of our...
I got a third of my Air Force is gone. My bombers are gone. I'm going to have to take those 2/3 that are left and do something.
Going to be consequences.
Before they're gone. I'm going to have to use them before they're gone, too.
Yeah. That's fucking... war is insane. That's I know exactly where I was in Bossier, Louisiana, and I got snowed in, and I couldn't get out of there, and I was there for 3 days.
Snowed in Louisiana?
Bossier. It's called Bossier, Louisiana, and I was
snowed in Louisiana.
No, fog, like fog or like.
Oh yeah, fogged in.
Yeah, fogged in, and thank you.
He gave you many tries to correct yourself. Yeah. Snowed in? Are you sure?
On a rare occasion, you might see a few snow in Louisiana, but nobody I know ever got snowed in Louisiana.
Yeah, no. It was like fog that came down.
Yeah, I can believe that.
And from Bossier to go to Dallas or to go to wherever it is that would fly me back to Los Angeles, they just weren't flying. So I was there for 3 days, and that's when that war started, which was like now it's been over 3 years. And, I just thought it was interesting that that like they.
Well, the word audacious hardly begins to describe it. My word.
Yeah.
I wonder what kind of capabilities they have left, or what is this response that Putin is talking about?
Yeah. Well,
I guess we'll know.
More bombs
soon enough
on innocent people.
Yep.
Well, I thought we'd talk a little bit today because I haven't really talked that much about the abyss on the podcast, and I thought I would talk a little bit about it today, just because it's got a reputation for being the most difficult, hardcore, like extremely, tough movie to work on. And so I thought that I would address it a little bit. It's got Ed Harris. Oh, Kathy Baker, by the way. Did you know about that, Jim? Kathy Baker said she'd come to the show.
You mentioned it the other night. I told you she was in a movie that we had something to do with developing when I was at ICM called Street Smart.
Right.
And
Morgan Freeman. Morgan. Yeah, introducing Morgan Freeman, right?
Yeah, it was like this was one of Morgan Freeman's earliest parts, and he came out of this thing with great reviews. Pauline Kael said he may be the best American actor, and this is after one movie. Also starred Christopher Reeve, and she was terrific in that. And she's got
Oh,
really terrific credits when you look at them. My
yeah,
word.
yeah. I was, I'd like to ask her, hey, when you were working with Morgan Freeman, was there anything about him that you thought yourself like, oh my God, this guy's really good? Like Pauline Kael said, he's, or were you just like working and he seemed like he was good? And I don't know, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I did watch a movie, but I fell asleep and I didn't watch the whole thing, where she co-stars with Robert De Niro and Ed Harris. She plays Ed Harris's sister and kind of a love interest to Robert De Niro, which is a fucking part I would have liked to have played. You can't really, it's really, they talk about something being a two-hander or a three-hander.
Yeah, exactly.
So far it's just those three. And, I can't wait to have her
Jackknife.
on. We're just, what's that?
Jackknife.
Jackknife. Yeah. Jackknife's the name of the movie. And, young Ed.
I told you that I remember looking at that when we were doing the HBO Vietnam series, because the movie deals with somebody with post-traumatic stress syndrome. That's a big part of the plot.
Yeah, I mean, Ed's, drinking very, very heavily, and they were in Vietnam. They lost a good friend. Seemed like there were the three amigos, these three guys that were over in Vietnam, and their friend gets killed, and what's it all about? What's it all about? Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. What's it all about? So anyway, I can't. I also. And she didn't really have that much to do, but the first thing that I wanted to see her in, and I watched it last night, is it called Paterno? I think it's the name. Yeah. I think it's the name of the coach of what's that team?
Joe Paterno of the Penn State.
Yeah.
The Nittany Lions.
Yeah. Well, I guess when somebody says, would you be interested in being a movie and playing Al Pacino's wife in a movie about the gruesome things that went on there? I guess that's kind of one of those things that there's just some things you don't say no to.
And, you don't say no. Playing opposite Al Pacino.
Right.
Pass that up.
Right. And that's kind of I thought that was a pretty interesting look at that whole situation, and it reminded me of that. We won't get political here, but it reminded me of that congressman who was the wrestler who saw some stuff and never reported it. What's the name of that guy, Jim? You know what I'm talking about. I think his name is Jim, actually. Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Didn't he?
Yeah, he was like.
Didn't he see some?
He was an assistant wrestling coach at Ohio State, who one of his associates was clearly fondling the boy, and more, and he see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and it was going on right in front of him, and he's dummied up about it. He just let it pass.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the same thing that happened to Joe, and they
pretty much so. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe got fired, and they tore down his statue, and he died 2 weeks later. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, he did, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how he was right in the middle of a season, and 4 games left. He said he'd retire. He wanted to coach the last 4 games.
Right.
And
I'd forgotten that. That really is kind of awesome.
They wouldn't let him coach the last 4 games, and I think
the heat was building so much as it came out more and more of what that assistant coach Sandusky had done.
Yeah,
that there was just no way it could go forward.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Pacino's role there was similar. He was doing a number of movies for HBO, about real people. You know, he played Kevorkian. in one of those
Kevorkian, he
movies.
played, what was the other one that
Yeah.
you were telling me about?
Phil Spector. Phil
Oh,
Spector.
I don't think I saw that one. He plays Phil
Yeah.
Spector. I would love
Yeah.
to. Pacino
Yeah.
playing Phil Spector.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
I liked it. Yeah, I saw that one. I remember just turning it on one day. I didn't even know who Phil Spector was. It was
Right.
just, I just watched the whole
Well, it's a
story, and I
huge
had to go
name
look
in
at
the
what the whole
history of
story was. Yeah.
music. Yeah.
was a while
What's
ago.
the name of it? Because it's probably not called Phil Spector like this one was called.
Phil Spector.
It's called Phil Spector.
Well, then,
And is the other one called Kevorkian?
I think it is called Kevorkian.
I guess if you do something and it's good and people like it, you do it again. Don't change it. Don't change anything about it, man. Anyway, getting back to the.
It was David Mamet who wrote and directed that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Did you know
Really?
that, Jim?
What, Kevorkian?
No, Phil Spector.
Oh, wow. No, I had no idea. Maybe I should watch that. I think I avoided it just because the subject was so unpleasant, I thought. But yeah, I think I should watch that.
Yeah, I think I'll go home and watch that this after I get my son down to sleep. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about The Abyss because of how difficult people talk about it. It being working on that movie, and they'll always ask me, was that the most difficult movie you've ever worked on? How bad was it? Yada, yada. And, it was Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. They kind of had a group. And they all, again, it was one of those situations where all the deep sea divers that were on the rig, they all kind of hung out together. And I played the bad guy, and I wanted, I probably am in about 8% of that movie. I mean, I love the character, and I love the death. I mean, what other actor can say that he died in an implosion? Right? On film. Yeah.
Well, when that
a
ship
Titan,
went down with that submarine,
No,
everyone
same
started
thing.
sending you your fucking death scene in the abyss.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And Jim Cameron came out to speak about what an idiot that guy was,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
how he
yeah.
shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I
taken
just saw the documentary about that, and pretty
You know-
creepy what happened.
Well, it just sounds like that guy was like, you know what, he had like the way that he ran, went down.
Pretty
the
haphazard. My God, he had a video game joystick for controlling this thing. You're going to go down to
It's like
to
a
the
PlayStation
Titanic
remote.
with
a PlayStation
with a
remote
PlayStation remote.
All right, that's just
Hey,
like.
don't worry about those cracks, those bangs you're hearing in the hull.
Well,
That's normal.
what
Even submarines do
what
that.
Jim was seemed to be upset about was the fact that people in the know, meaning probably the United States Navy, knew right from the very beginning that
It's
thing had
very
imploded.
very clear.
But
from
they
looking at the-
they let it go for a couple of days as if they were searching for, remains or,
Yeah.
And I think that Jim felt
How many dives did Jim make? 30? More than 30, I think.
I don't know, but Jim dove. What's the name of that? The
Deepest part of the world, Marianas Trench.
The Marianas Trench. Yeah, he went.
I think he's been the deepest point any human has ever been.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. Maybe somebody surpassed that, but I thought he went to the deepest point on Earth.
Yeah. Well, if I was going to go anywhere like that, it would certainly be with Jim Cameron. I used to talk to Bill Paxton. He says scared. She was so fucking scared when they did their dive. I think they went down to the Titanic too. And he said,
He didn't feel
something
the
about
boat?
something about his underwear being brown or something.
Bill went on one of those dives.
Bill went on one of those dives, and
my word.
this was the period of time when Jim was waiting for Avatar, waiting for the technology to catch up to Avatar, and Jim was doing all sorts of things. And one of the things he did was take Bill Paxton down, I believe, to the Titanic. And Bill said he was fucking scared shitless the entire time. Like, wasn't one moment where he felt sort of like, oh, okay, well, this is,
oh my God! Any little noise would drive you.
which reminds me of being, when I did The Abyss, I was inside what they called a submersible. Okay, and I'm inside of a submersible at the end of the movie, and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's inside a submersible, I think with Ed, and the two submersibles fight, and but I can remember being in that submersible, and Jim's trying. You got to remember, it's underwater. Just try to think about doing anything eating, sleeping, you can go to the bathroom. That's pretty easy to do underwater, but it's hard to film underwater. Really, really, really hard to film. And I think that the people that had it the most difficult on that movie was number one, Jim Cameron. Jim spent more time underwater and at depth than, and I'll tell you a quick story. The DP is named Al Giddings or Al.
Oh yeah, very famous underwater photographer, Al Giddings.
Al Giddings, yeah. And Al was under there a lot, and they had a lot of safety divers. The safety divers would, make sure that because we were not in scuba gear. I didn't have scuba gear on. Mm-hmm. I had, a helmet on, and that was connected to something that I wore on my shoulders that was part of my wardrobe. And when I would go down, and we would go down, there were two tanks. One was a not real deep tank. The other one was about a 30-foot tank. That was the big tank. I think it had over 1 million gallons of water in it.
Shooting in an old nuclear power plant, weren't you? In the tanks of an old nuclear power plant in South Carolina.
Yeah, it's called Gaffney, South Carolina, and I guess at some point they were going to put it was Linda Hamilton that always taught me to say nuclear instead of nuclear. When I was doing the Terminator, she's like, Michael, no, it's not nuclear. It's nuclear. I get so excited when I'm yelling at her that I probably got it wrong. But she was always, but yes, it was the shell of a nuclear, what was going to be
the cooling tower.
I guess.
It would have been the cooling tower. Huge reservoir.
And Jim, and again Gail. I'm reaching out to Gail. She's just so fascinating to see if she could possibly come talk to us. That she would just be amazing to have on the show. But they found that place and rigged it in a way where they could fill it up with water and shoot a movie underwater. Now, obviously, the whole movie is not shot underwater, and I'm not sure exactly what % is shot underwater, but I can guarantee you, I spent a lot of time underwater, and I know the guys that were playing the SEALs with me spent a lot of time underwater, and I sat inside of that submersible, and there was no communication. It wasn't like I could talk and anybody could hear me. And while they were setting up shots, I'd be sitting in that thing for an hour or 2 hours, just waiting for them to, set the shot and get it correct. Now, when I actually shot my death scene, that was when I'm reaching up and the things cracking and everything. That was on a set. And that was on a set, but I did a lot of waiting and wait. And you
didn't have to play like you were going crazy.
Well,
you probably were sitting in that thing all those hours. Yeah.
Well, the one thing about acting, one thing about movies, television, and being in the Army is that there's a lot of waiting around.
Really?
And there's a lot of waiting around when when we were working. And I used to take scripts of other stuff that I had either been offered or people were possibly interested in me doing, and I would just sit inside of that thing and read the scripts. And
why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little multitasking there by Michael Biehn. So one of the things that I wanted to mention about, because people talk, is the safety divers. I think it had it real bad. There were some divers that needed to set up lights for Al. What'd you say his last name was? Giddings?
Giddings.
Yeah, and those are the people that I think spent the most time underwater, and they did have to deal with chlorine sort of. Changing the color of their hair, taking the color out of their hair. But Jim was, here's an example. I remember going to work one day and I probably spent 6 or 7 hours underwater. I never had to do what they call hang off the line, which is when you are underwater for a long period of time, let's say 30 feet, and you're under there for 6 or 7 hours, you can't just go straight to the top because you get the bends. And so therefore you have to, I think they used to call it hang off the line or something like that. So it's like a rope and you go up like 10 feet and you wait 20 minutes. Then you go up another 10 feet. And
you
wait
have to adjust
40 minutes. Yeah, exactly. Your body has to deal with it. And I didn't, I never had to do that because I was never underwater for that length of time, for that long of time. But I remember working one day, and I was wrapped and out of the water, and I was just trashed. It was just a long day, a lot of underwater stuff. I was just exhausted. And I remember walking by. They used to have something that they would call the observation window, which is a big window that if you wanted to, you could watch the production being set up. You could watch Jim setting up the shots. You could see the actors down there. You could, it was called the observation window. And I remember walking by the observation window, and there was nobody in the tank except for Jim. And Jim was hanging off the line, okay? And Jim was hanging off the line upside down, okay? And Jim was hanging off the line upside down, looking at a monitor underwater. All right? So I'm looking at this, and I'm just thinking, like, what the fuck? Guy's unbelievable. So I say to him the next day, hey, Jim, I was just, I'd wrapped where everybody was going home. You were still hanging off the line. Why were you upside down? And he said, well, the helmets that we all were made for us, and they were somewhat comfortable. The helmet that he had, which he could communicate to one person underneath the water. If he would plug in, he could communicate to one person. The helmet that he had on, his laid very, very heavy on his shoulders. So his shoulders were getting very bruised because of this helmet that was laying on. So he was like upside down because the helmet was hurting his shoulders.
Taking the weight off, huh?
Taking the weight off his shoulders. And I'm like, well, you like had like a monitor in front of you. What the hell was that? And he was going, oh, I was watching dailies. I'm like, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? You know, that's where you know, Jim has a tendency to.
That's got to be one of the more revealing stories I've ever heard about him.
Well, it just goes to show you that he doesn't waste, you know, waste any time. He's watching. It's the only time that he has because he's probably spending, you know, 18 hours a day working, and you know, if he's got a half an hour and he's got nothing to do, he's going to watch dailies, and he's going to do it underwater, and he's going to do it upside down.
Upside down.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just absolutely insane. And
you remember when Tim Colseri came on the set, and he walked on the set, and Jim popped up from the water and said, "Hey, Timmy, I just set the record for the longest time underwater shooting in one session."
Yeah, I know that. You know Timmy, and I know Timmy, and we all know the same stories. So you can we'll tell the audience that one. But yeah, I certainly knew that. And Timmy did come down to visit me. Brought Devin and Taylor down when they were like 6 or 7 or something like that. Brought Devin and Taylor down to spend some time.
Is that when he gave you that joint that you smoked before?
That'll lead to that story. Jim, actually, he mailed that to me, and I was in Gaffney, and you know there was never anything to do in Gaffney. There was a bigger city about an hour away, and we were in South Carolina. It might have been North Carolina. I've forgotten what it was, but it was a big city. We could go up there if we wanted to go into a club or that type of thing. But I didn't really do much partying on that because there was nobody to party with, really. But he gave me he sent me in the mail, Timmy Colseri sent me in the mail a joint. So, like, not the smartest thing to do, but back then, you know, like nobody, whatever.
Definitely.
Right. So, so I had this joint, and I've been a wake and bake guy. And I don't, whenever there was probably always marijuana in my system, but if I had something important to do, I didn't, I never smoked if I had, dialogue, and, I never would get, hot, that high. So, but anyway, I'm going to the set, and I'm shooting the sequence where I get into the fight with Ed Harris, and I still like this joint. So it's in my pocket or whatever, and I pull it out. And I'm like, oh, here's this joint. I take a couple hits off this joint. Take a couple hits off of it, put it in the ashtray. I got so fucking stoned, man. I was so fucking just wow. It was it was really, really good pot. He gotten from a friend of his who was a.
Well, you hadn't had any for a while either.
No, that's the thing, is I hadn't had any for probably 2 weeks or a month or something. And Jim wouldn't let me go back to L.A. And I had a lot of time. So, but I was like, Timmy had a country western star singer. I forget his name. I'll think of his name in a second. But that's who gave it to him. He gave it to me, and I just wasn't used to. First of all, it had been a couple of weeks since I gotten high, or a month or 2 months or whatever. And on top of that, I think it was just like crazy ass pot. So, I was so stoned I barely could make it through a wardrobe. We didn't have to. I got some makeup done on me, and I was just quiet, You know, I was just quiet, acting like I was like, like going over my lines in my head. I didn't have any lines or anything. I just had to do this fight sequence with Ed. And, I got my wardrobe on. And then, I'm dressed like a Navy SEAL. And, but anyway, I go out on the set. And it's just, that there's a chain that I'm pulling on. And it's just kind of got a weird vibe, that set. The water's about a foot or 2 feet high, and I'm sitting there, and I'm clearly out of my fucking mind in 2 ways. One, my character is like absolutely out of his fucking mind at that point. And I'm a little out of my mind because I'm so stoned that, like, I can remember Jim Cameron entering the area that we were shooting at and me having a conversation with myself whether I was going to be able to say, "Hi, Jim," or "Good morning, Jim," and be able to get that out of my mouth. That's how drunk I was. I mean, drunk, not a Freudian slip. No. That's how high I was. So I'm sitting there and feeling like, a little paranoid and a little bit like, God, I hope nobody fucking notices. And I look up and I see me. I see myself on the other side of the room. And it was me. It was me. I was here, and I was over there, too. and I was stoned out of my fucking mind, man. And I was like, how can I be over there? How can I be there when I'm here?
And you can rub your eyes.
It was about 10 seconds, and like I said, I was I was blazing anyway, and there were about 10 or 12, 15 seconds where my mind was just like, oh my God, I can't, this is too much, I can't deal, this is like, and when I looked back again for the third or fourth time, I saw myself, I turned to look back at me and I realized, it was my stunt double in all my wardrobe, and he had the fucking everything on. He had the knife in his hand. He had the whole thing,
the mustache, everything.
Totally, like he was my stunt double. Of course, he looked exactly like me. So I was kind of over there, but that was like, whew, okay, well, feeling much better now. Let's get this.
Calling Michael. Yeah.
That was pretty crazy. And we had another thing that happened down while we were shooting. And what happened was that we would get into that tank, and the actors, not the safety divers and not Jim, but the actors all had on weighted boots. And that it was kind of like walking on the moon, so you could kind of like bounce around down there, but you were weighted down. You were supposed to be able to walk down, and that was, I guess, part of the story. That's how these divers and these guys work on these rigs and stuff like that. That they've got these weights on, and there was an underwater oxygen. Sort of an oxygen tank. So at any time, you could look, see how much oxygen you had. And, it'd be like a gas tank. You look down, I'm at 3/4. I got nothing else to do. I'm going to go over and fill up, I only got a half a thing. I better go over and fill up. And I always think that was good for about an hour or something like that, because we were underwater. And I was in these helmets. We didn't have scuba gear on, and we didn't have what they call an octopus, which is, divers, sucking oxygen off their back. This was just being poured into us. The oxygen was being supplied underwater. And so anyway, I was down there. I don't remember if Chris was down there too. Chris was one of the other SEALs. I think the SEALs were down there, and there were some crew members. I don't think Mary was there. I don't think that Ed was there. And what was happening at the beginning of the movie when Jim was trying to shoot underneath the water in this huge tank is the lights would, like from the sun, would come through and go through the water, and it was kind of messing up like his ability to light a underwater shot that he wanted to shoot because he had to deal with the sun. So they came up with this idea very early on that they would take beads. If you just think of little black beads, you know, about the size of a dime around, not even smaller than that, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them, and they floated, and they floated on top of the tank. So what they had a tendency to, what the reason they put them on there was to block the light. So when you came up, there would be all these sort of black beads there, and Jim was then able to, because it was now dark up above, Jim was able to go ahead and light shots the way that he was normally, like you would in a normal room. You don't have to deal with the sun if you're completely
Blacked out.
Blacked out. Thank you. And so we'd be down there, and we got pretty comfortable down there doing that. It was fun. I thought it was fun. People talk about how difficult it was. I thought it was fun. I thought the whole thing was just a blast. Had a great time. Like I said, I didn't have to work as much as some of the other people, but I'd go down there and just be bouncing around, and you're underwater, you're shooting a movie underwater, you're recording dialogue underwater, you're doing some things for the first time ever that any actor's ever done in the history of movies, and I was just enjoying myself. I had a really good time, and I was, always in wardrobe, and we were down there once, and there were a lot of guys. They set up lights and stuff. It was always, pretty well lit down there. And at one point when we were working, when I was underwater, everything went black. Just effing black. They lost power to the entire unit, to the entire tank. They lost all power. And I'm talking about, it goes from like this, like I'm talking to you, to you can't see your hand in front of your face. Black. Now, there was always a safety diver or two divers that were kind of watching me and watching Chris or anybody else who was down there with these helmets on. Jim, and at some point, Ed Harris, and so there were these safety divers down there, but all of a sudden it goes black, and it's just like, where's my safety divers? Wait a second, when was the last time that I, got oxygen? How much oxygen do I have? It was like, whoa. It was like, wow. And it lasted probably less than 10 minutes, but it was probably 6 or 7 minutes, 8 minutes, something. It was a long enough time that
there was no light at all?
None.
During that time?
I mean, when I say black, nothing, Jim. You couldn't.
And the helmets that the safety divers were wearing didn't have lights in them?
No.
Individual?
No.
Oh, wow.
No.
Wow.
No. No.
Wow.
No. And I finally, after 6 or 7 minutes of being more and more scared, because I didn't know the way out. I didn't know left from right. I didn't know east from west. I didn't know, and I couldn't go to the top.
It was almost like being in an isolation tank.
Well, yeah.
I could well imagine
I had to walk out of that when the lights were on. I had to walk to a certain area and then walk up these steps and then like get out. I couldn't just like take my boots off. I couldn't. I was stuck there, and so were I think a few other people. After a bit of time, I thought to myself, and I realized that I had what they call a practical light. When you're on a movie set and you see a light that turns on and off on the set, that's called a practical. Okay, that's a practical light. That's a light that the DP knows is there, and he's ready for you to turn that light on and off. And I realized that I had a practical flashlight. My character carries around a flashlight and uses it in the movie, but I was so fucking stoned or so whatever that I hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah.
So I pull this flashlight out and I turn it on, and immediately people started coming towards me, because I was the only one who had a light. Everybody was in the same boat as me. And immediately people started coming towards me, and like 3, 4, 5, 6
Jim
people, like eyes wide, like oh my, like this is, thank God, people just, they came glued to me. And
Jim should have had a camera on that.
Well, Jim eventually, and I don't mean eventually like he was being slow about it. He was, one of the first people that came over, and he realized the situation that I was in and that some of the other actors and other people that had the boots on were in. And he, through sign language, basically it was kind of a follow me. I'm going to lead everybody out. You need to follow me, And he took my flashlight, and we followed. It was dark. I mean, except for that light in front of us, it was, black. And we followed Jim, and we followed him for a minute or two, right when we sort of got to the area where we would start walking upstairs, but we didn't know it because it was completely black. All the lights turned back on again. So it went from lights to like completely black for 5 or 6 minutes to a flashlight. Everybody, crowded around. All right, we're going out this way. Follow me. Follow Jim Cameron, and then the lights came all back on again. So, people talk about, hey, does anything ever happen on a movie set? You ever get scared? Ever any stunts that you like? That was kind of gnarly. And
that would have had my shorts brown too. Or just like Bill Paxton on the bottom of the ocean.
And there's some way that they did it, of course, but I've never understood how you could take lights and electricity and use electricity underwater,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Somebody a lot smarter than me. I mean, a lot smarter than me.
How are you going to make sure? That's what I would have been. All these cables running.
Cables, and lights, and it was. But I had a really, really, really fun time. I had a good time on that movie. When I saw the movie, I was very happy with my performance. I think that I've mentioned this before. Jim had me in, and Jim has a tendency to make movies that are long and then be cut down. He did that with a scene of mine in The Terminator that I thought was when I first got the script, I thought, this is the scene. This is the scene where Reese breaks down, and oh my God, this is the scene. This is the scene. This was not in the movie. And I was with Sigourney Weaver when we were in New York before any of the actors saw the movie in Aliens, and I was with Sigourney when Jim told her that a lot of her story about her child that she had, and when I'm not talking about Newt, I'm talking about a real child that she had been cut from the movie. And I was with Sigourney, and Sigourney was not happy.
Oh,
she
my
was
goodness.
not happy about it at all. And
There's no trace of that in the movie, is there?
well, if you go look at like the director's cut, there's a big trace of it, and you'll see.
Okay.
You'll see if you look at the director's cut, you'll see that yes, there was a real backstory there, but Jim has to decide, how long the movie's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that Sigourney probably forgave him when she was nominated for an Academy Award for that role. You don't see that type of role, action, kind of horror action movie.
Yeah.
You don't really see people
getting nominated for that.
No, you don't. And but I was with her, and which I want to get back to talking about the Abyss, but it just reminds me of they were having a screening for the press in New York City, and this is Aliens now that I'm talking about. And Jim and Gail and whoever and everybody at Fox, all the press was going to go watch the movie, and they didn't want the actors watching it. They didn't want the actors watching it at the same time as the press watched it. Whatever, fair enough. We didn't quite understand it at the time. So when I saw Aliens for the first time, Bill Paxton and myself made our way up to the projector. And, back in the day, there used to be a guy up there who was running the projector.
Yeah.
And,
in the booth.
Yeah, and had a little, had a hole that he could, if something went wrong, everybody remembers. Well, people that are my age.
Everybody.
That's not everybody.
Yeah.
That's not everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
So Bill and I made our way up there, and Bill and I watched the entire movie with the not camera operator. What'd you call him, Jim?
The projectionist.
The projectionist, yeah. We watched the entire movie kind of like through the projector's the thing that he sees the movie through.
Yeah.
And I can remember we were both just like totally stoked, and we were jumping up and we were high-fiving each other, and Bill Paxton at that time described the movie, Bill, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? Oh my God, it's a fucking roller coaster ride, Michael. It's going down. Trying to do my Bill Paxton imitation here.
Pretty good, you got.
Not very good at that. It's interesting because people describe that movie as a roller coaster ride, and I have a feeling that Bill said it so many times to so many people in the press, they eventually just started calling it a roller coaster ride. But that's how I saw that movie. Now, when we did The Abyss, on the other hand, Jim, either I was on the lot. I don't think I wasn't at home. I was on the lot. I was on the Fox lot, and he knew I was on the lot, and he called. He got a message to me and said, "Come on over here. I want you to take a look at some stuff." And I went over, and I said, "What do you got?" he said, well, I wanted to show you the ending of The Abyss. I've got a cut, which is, 22 minutes longer than what the studio wants me to release. And I want you to take a look at them, and I want you to tell me what you think, which one that you like more. And so I did. That's where I saw the end of The Abyss. And, The Abyss is, I think the end of The Abyss is the only, like, mark, I don't know exactly what you would call it, on a flawless filmmaker's career. Is the end of The Abyss somehow doesn't work as well as it should work. And I think I remember telling him that, which I don't, and he wasn't happy with me. He wasn't happy with me at all. But I told him, and in retrospect, when you think about The Abyss, there's a part in that movie where Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, I used to call her Mary Elizabeth Mastra, etc. She was sweet to me, though. They are trying to survive. They're in a room where the water is rising, and they've only got one helmet, and they have to decide who's going to wear the helmet and who's going to get dragged underwater and then brought back to life once they got to dry land. And it's a great, great scene, and they're just like fun. Both of them are phenomenal actors, phenomenal. And it's just a great, great, great scene. And
very tense moment. In
very,
the movie.
very, very tense. And he says, you wear it. And she says, no, you wear it. And then she kind of makes a point of, like, the reason why you should wear it is, and he has to say, like, oh, yeah, you're right about that. Okay, all right, I'll put it on. And so what happens is she drowns. And then he's got to, grab her and take her underwater for, I don't know, 100 yards or 200 yards or whatever.
Considerable distance, yeah.
And then bring her out and lay her on
the deck.
A dry surface, the deck, correct, and bring her back to life, which he does with the help of his crew. And that scene is so emotional, and Ed Harris is so wonderful. He's like, come on, you can do it. And, they're pumping her chest, and
it's a very moving scene.
Oh, it's just incredible.
Very moving.
It brings tears to my eyes now.
Well, it really does, for sure.
Yeah, and she, he ends up slapping her, and they don't think that she's gonna, and he's like, wake up, you bitch, and he's slapping her, and she finally, like, burps up some water, and oh my God. So, and of course she lives. She's the female lead in the movie. Yeah. I play the bad guy. I'm the one who dies. But it's
yet again.
Yeah. So it's a very, very, very emotional scene. And in my heart of hearts, I don't think that the actors in the movie, or the characters in the movie, are they're never as emotional as they are in that scene. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the audience never sees anything that is more emotional than that scene. And that scene is so good, it should have been like at the end of the movie, like at the end, because once you've,
you're right about that. It's hard to recover from that moment.
Yeah. And I think that, just because the actors were so good, and I think that's been. I think that Ed Harris, who's, I hear bits and pieces I see online. I hear him talking. I would never want to speak to him. But Ed worked hard. He worked hard on that movie, and he had a close call or two. And I think that he was disappointed in the way that he reacted to fear. And but I think that he was very, very, very disappointed at the end of the movie, especially the one, because they used the shorter one. And, there's all of this incredible filmmaking going on. And then, like, the end happens, and everybody's just kind of standing out in the middle of the ocean on a big plank of wood or something, and it just doesn't work, man. It just doesn't work. And it's the only time I would ever say that. It just doesn't work. And I know that Ed was very unhappy about that. He just, like, poured his soul into that character. And I remember they were trying to cast that character while I was there. I'd been there for a while, and I auditioned for Jim Cameron for the Terminator. I replaced James Remar in Aliens, and Jim just offered me this role of Coffee, and I had a great time making that movie. And
you had another person in the cast named Todd Graff. Todd
Graff was one of the oil workers who was part of Mary Elizabeth's team, and Mary Elizabeth and Ed Harris played husband and wife. They're in the middle of a divorce or something like that, like Jim and Gail. Well, Jim was
right?
Jim and Gail were boyfriend and girlfriend when we did the Terminator. They were married when we did Aliens, and they were divorced when we made The Abyss. And she was there. She produced the whole thing, responsible for producing that movie. And they were divorced. So I think there was some of that. Some of that stuff was so good. Ed was just so good, and I think that I think he was just very, very disappointed.
And Todd's the guy who has the rat on his shoulder throughout much of the movie, and he was in right around the same time. He was in one of our war story pieces that was like a one-man show about a guy who gets separated from his unit, and then a couple of years later, he really hit it as a screenwriter.
Yeah, well, I know that he was a writer, and I know that he
got a couple of movies produced.
Well, yeah, good for him. He also came out of the closet a year or two ago, so he's got that going for him too. Finally able to be himself, I guess. But yeah, Todd was that was kind of reminds me of around the time that Jim was thinking about The Minds of Billy Milligan. You remember that script,
yes,
Jim?
Yes.
That was that was a movie that Jim wanted to make, and just I guess he had problems with the people that owned the book.
Yeah, it was a well-known book,
and it was wasn't it about a young man who had 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 different personalities?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that Jim saw Todd as a writer. I think Jim saw his talent, and I think that Jim might have worked with him or wanted him to work on something. I've forgotten, but I seem to remember a bond between he and Jim Cameron, because of his writing ability. And so, when people talk to me about like a movie being difficult, it was difficult for Jim. It was difficult for those safety divers. It was really difficult for Ed Harris. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, well, she won't even talk about it. She said, she had such a bad experience. And from what I understand, that scene that I said was so heartbreaking, or it was so emotional was a scene that she felt that Jim was just pushing them too hard, and got up. And I've heard, okay, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I've heard that she said, "We're not animals," and walked off the set. But I very well could be wrong about that. So, and I know Mary's not going to come out, and I know Ed Harris is not going to come out and say anything about it because they never talk about it. I didn't think it was, I'll talk about K2 on one of these shows.
You've been asking about it.
People are asking about it, yeah. And K2 was like, wow, that was much more. For me, difficult. Sometimes working in the elements, working in freezing cold weather, working sometimes stunts with fires and things like that. You can. I enjoyed that movie. I enjoyed being on the set. The only problem that I had on the set was that I didn't. I wasn't on the set all the time. I wasn't working all the time. I was mostly like waiting for them to shoot their stuff. And so
you told me how funny it was to, be in wardrobe and makeup, etc., and then hear a knock on the door. And
whoa, Jim, you have to put that in perspective, okay? Because that now you're talking about K2.
Yes.
Okay, so. Go you can go ahead, but I just want to make sure that everybody knew that you were talking about K2 at this point, and
yes.
Not you had gone back to the Abyss after K2. I was wondering for a minute there. I was like, which movie is he talking about?
Yeah.
But then I figured it out. It was the Abyss. But that's all right, Jim. I was there with you for a minute.
So you can go ahead.
Well, yeah, I thought you were talking about K2. How much you enjoyed doing the movie?
Well, I didn't enjoy doing that movie. I was going through a really difficult time during that movie. Really, really difficult time. But what you're talking about, and I'll go ahead and just tell the story, is that we used to shoot on a glacier, and we used to shoot at 15,000 feet or something like that. That was our base camp. We had a base camp just like climbers do. And I never learned any of that stuff. I never learned to dive. I was never into diving. I was never into. Although I had to get certified for the Abyss. But yeah, there was a lot of work on top of that mountain, and it wasn't easy to get from place to place. And so I would get up in the morning, I would get my wardrobe on, I would go in the makeup, get my makeup done, let the first aid, get a second AD know I'm ready whenever they need me. I go back in my tent. There were tents that we had. And then I would get a knock on the front of the tent, on the front of the
trailer.
On the front of the tent, and I get a knock on the front of the tent. Mr. Biehn? Mr. Biehn, your helicopter is ready. I'm like, yes. So we did a lot of helicopter work on that movie. Loads and loads of helicopter work. But I don't, I want to save that experience. I was going through with his mother, and that was the whole Patsy Kensit situation, which and I was
That's an episode in itself right there.
Well, you know, I was in a lot of pain because I never wanted to hurt your mother. I never wanted to hurt your mother. Never wanted to hurt her. And I had, and I did. But during the making of that movie, Patsy, there was a time that we were together, and we spent some like 6 months together, and then I was supposed to go over to England and be with her in England, and I knew in my head, I know exactly where I was. I was in Lake Havasu, on the phone in Lake Havasu when I was talking to her, and I told her that I couldn't come over there. I wouldn't come over there because I knew that paparazzi over there is like vicious, just like crazy stuff. But I was still going through that, and then that put a cooler on things. I was kind of still going through that when I was doing K2, and she was there for a while, and that was the end of that. But because I was still trying to end this on a more fun note.
Yeah, really. Somebody tell a joke. You have a moment with Mary Elizabeth, Mastra, etc. That I remember telling you I thought was really golden, and I thought it was a terrific example of great screenwriting, and you said it wasn't in the screenplay.
It wasn't. Yeah, go ahead.
And that's when you're kind of taking over late in the movie, and you back her up against the bulkhead.
Yep.
And it's a close shot of your faces, and from below you hear this ripping sound.
Yep.
And you say, I've been wanting to do this ever since I came on board.
Right.
And we think you're ripping open her pants, and you pull up a piece of duct tape and put it over her mouth.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really funny moment, really, oh, what a great screenwriting bit this is. Yeah, Jim would have come up with this. What's the real story?
Well, as you well know, the line was the line, and I was supposed to put it over her mouth, but it was my idea to take that and do that.
Okay.
Underneath the camera. Who said okay?
Jim.
Oh, yeah. And it was my idea to hide that from the audience. So when you hear that ripping, it sounds kind of scary and disgustingly rapey, kind of weird.
It does, for sure. That's where my mind went.
Yeah. And that was my intent. And when Jim, Robert Rodriguez, Quentin's the same, if you come up with an idea that's a great idea, Jim, say, great idea, Michael, do that. I like that. Yeah, let's do that. Another thing that I did in that movie was there was a black actress, and maybe Caitlin can pull her name up, and she used to have one of the submersibles.
Kimberly Scott?
Yeah, Kimberly. And Kimberly, character was like a country western sort of person, and she had this radio or tape player in her submersible. So she used to, at the beginning of the movie, they set up the fact that she listens to this country western music, and when I take over that sub, I get in the sub, and I start taking off, and I'm losing my effing mind, and all of a sudden this fucking music, comes on, this country western music, and I said to Jim, do you mind if I just use my elbow and just wham, like end that in a hurry, And he was like, no, you go for it, Michael. And I don't think they didn't change it. They didn't change whatever it was, if it was real or not real. I don't know, but they didn't make it soft for my elbow, But it was another moment that, as an actor that you have that like, okay, well, that's the end of that fucking business. I've got I'm losing my mind here. I don't need fucking to be listening to If I could think of a country and western singer's name, I would have. But anyway, I think that Jim, I think that we're going to call this now that I've talked a lot about that. We can do a whole episode on Russia too. I'd love to talk about Russia. Russia was what a shithole that place is. Fucking horrible. What a fucking horrible place it is.
You were
what
in,
horrible
you were in
people.
Siberia too, is
all
that
of
right?
them. What?
You were in Siberia?
I was in Siberia. Yeah, I was in a
my
place
goodness.
called. I'll have to look it up because I forget. Norilsk. It's called Norilsk.
Gulag,
okay,
was it called
it was
Gulag?
fucking 20 degrees below zero the entire time I was there, and
God.
and they. I don't know what their production fell apart, and they tried to fucking blame me. But I'll wait for another.
That does sound like a whole story. In and of
Oh,
itself.
it's a story, all right. And I probably shouldn't have been doing some of the things that I did. No, I'm not talking about drinking.
Yeah.
You know, the director had an attractive wife, and you know, it's just a whole,
Stuff like that happens, you know? It happens. It was on the same.
there was a leading lady. It was just, anyway, I don't know, that was quite a scene. Okay, so we'll wrap this up, Jim. Thank you.
You got it.
Had a good time today. Thank you. I love you, Kaylin.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank, I didn't even know that you can you can look at the podcast. Oh, people make remarks here. Like, oh, I can read. People are like saying, "Oh, they like me. Oh, they like me." Jim, they really like me.
Like me. They really like me.
Only-
From
only-
all over the world.
Oh,
even.
yeah, only Jim would get that one. Yeah, they like me. They really like me. It's a
Sally
Field.
Field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe anybody would make
Terms
fun
of
of her.
endearment. Or no, it wasn't terms of endearment. What was that other one she did?
That was wasn't that where she played the
John Malkovich was in it too.
Oh, I thought it was where the one that she played the working.
Oh yeah, that was
workers'
Norma Ray. That was her first
Norma Ray.
Oscar.
That was not
yeah.
the You Like Me, You Really Like Me. That was the second Oscar.
No, that was the second Oscar.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
pretty sure. Well,
You don't know what it is either, do you?
no, I don't
Right
know
now.
the name of it. The one with John Malkovich.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Malkovich guy stole my role in fucking. All right. All right. Goodbye. Oh, yeah. And by the way, yeah, it's like fun to everybody's real positive and talking about how much they like me and what a wonderful actor I am. I really like that. Now I wake up in the morning and I look at my phone and see people talking about how much they like me. It makes me feel really good. Anyway, we will see you and talk to you, and I thank you for hanging in there. We got this nice little core audience, and I'm just having a great time, and I think Jim and Kayla.
Well, yeah, and we really appreciate people offering suggestions too, because I know a lot of people have asked. I noticed most recently a lot of people asking us to talk about the Michael Mann movie Manhunter.
Well, here's
which could be
another
interesting.
thing.
Yeah.
Let me just say this in closing. Everybody wants to know how come we don't see Jim? How come we don't see Jim? What's the deal with Jim? What's the deal with Jim? And when we started this, it was like sort of camera situation where it's like, all right, Jim, we don't quite have the camera set up exactly right. I just want to get your voice in. We were doing all the interviews too. We were interviewing, and you were just coming in like a voice from John Favreau, from Mandalorian.
Or you were thinking of that Tim Allen series,
Home Alone,
Improvement,
yeah.
with
Home
that
Improvement.
Yeah, I always say Home Alone.
Home Improvement,
Yeah.
yeah, with that Wilson, the guy you only saw his face partially through the fence.
Well,
The
and
next door neighbor,
and
yeah.
Wilson is the guy that knows everything all the time and always gives him
The
the best
Oracle
advice.
of Wisdom, yeah, the Oracle of
and
Wisdom.
it's kind of
yeah.
like you. You're the one who always knows the answers to everything, except for what Sally Field got nominated.
Places in the heart. one of those neurons sparked back to life long enough to remember that one.
All right. I love you all, and having a great time. And we will see you next time.
Got it.
Bye.